International Relations Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor is set to update Parliament on South Africa's latest stance on the Israeli-Hamas conflict. The violence has been ongoing for a month now with no signs of a ceasefire. South Africa has previously maintained that parties will work towards a permanent solution. However, yesterday, the minister in the presidency announced South Africa's decision to recall all its diplomats in Israel. Minister Pandor also slammed the international community for what she calls genocidal actions against Palestinian people. 10,000 people have been killed since the start of this war. Let's get you a sense of what else we need to think about. South Africa recalling its diplomats from Tel Aviv for consultations, and that's been confirmed, as I mentioned, by the Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni. Following a cabinet meeting, Israel continues with its bombardment of Gaza after a surprise attack by Hamas exactly a month ago. The death toll, one of the worst since this particular round of fighting began, and it's climbed to over 10,000. For more on this, let's bring in the Deputy Minister of International Relations in South Africa, Alvin, who joins us via our video link this morning. And Deputy Minister, it's lovely to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time for Newzroom Afrika. Yesterday, the Minister in the Presidency also spoke about a directive being given to DIRCO about what to do with the Israeli ambassador here in South Africa after mentioning that his stay has become, quote-unquote, untenable. What are you able to tell us about what that instruction is?
Thank you very much, Unati. I think at all times, the South African government should be seen to err on the side of the most vulnerable in regards to this conflict between the state of Israel and the people of Palestine. In fact, Unati, what we have is we have seen the Palestine people as lands being dispossessed, a Palestine people being besieged, and this is from 1948. So the recent events should be seen in the context of a 75-year struggle for self-determination of the Palestine people. What we do, obviously, as DIRCO, is to look at our bilateral relationship and give an expression to the attitude of the South African cabinet. You would recall, Unati, in 2018, we recall our South African ambassador that was based in our mission in Tel Aviv. That was obviously before the recent genocide that has been, inflicted against the people of Palestine. I think we welcome as DIRCO the very, authoritative opinion that seeks to raise the moral voice and the moral opinion of the South African government in relation to the plight of the Palestine people. We are recalling our, chargé from Tel Aviv and all other embassy personnel for further consultation. Obviously, Unati, the conduct of diplomats, in South Africa in particular, is in accordance, obviously, your Vienna Convention. There is certain diplomatic immunities and privileges, but at all times, the central aspect of a diplomat in South Africa, including the Israeli diplomat, is to exercise courteous and utilize, diplomatic channels to, engage in any matter of concern around them, and not to become a public, a critical voice of in the public against, a policy position of a government where you are a guest. And I think that is what we are saying. The Israeli ambassador was granted the privilege to be a guest in South Africa in accordance to the norms and standards that guides all diplomatic personnel.
Yeah, so what does that mean in practical terms, Deputy Minister? Is this ambassador likely to be expelled?
Well, the first point of call will be via the Minister of DIRCO, Dr. Naledi Pandor, which have been encouraged to have a session of dialogue. In diplomatic terms, we call it, to demarche the ambassador to express our discontent from the side of cabinet in relation to, the manner in which he conducts himself. It would obviously not be the first time, but it will be the first time that we are actually engaging with the diplomat whose government are, perpetuating genocidal crimes.
There are already people who are weighing in about whether or not this might have unintended consequences, the recall of our diplomats from Tel Aviv, that is. And part of the sentiment that's been expressed here is that it puts South Africa in a position where perhaps you have less influence about how this conflict actually unfolds because you don't have a presence in Tel Aviv through your representatives. What's your response to that?
Well, Unati, when Cabinet took a decision in 2018 to recall the South African ambassador in Tel Aviv, we thought that strategic decision will encourage the state of Israel to, establish a particular proximity in terms of engagement, with the South African government on the two-state solution. Nothing, subsequent to that has happened. In fact, what we have seen is that in the past, when the president has appointed special envoys to the Middle East, they have not been, granted the access to meet with the Israeli government. I think what this very, decisive action will demonstrate is the seriousness of South Africa to be the moral voice of reason and opinion, in the world. What we will encourage, obviously, Unati, is dialogue, with the Israeli state. What we need is an immediate cessation of hostilities. There must be immediate ceasefire so that a humanitarian corridor could be established. As we are speaking, Unati, more than 10,000, innocent Palestinian people have died, the majority who are women and children. And what we are requesting, obviously, and, we are very hopeful that, the state of Israel will heed the call for a ceasefire, establishment of a humanitarian corridor, and lasting negotiations that will realize the two-state solution. Where you would have an independent, a state of Palestine that would coexist, independently next to a state of Israel. And I think that is what the Oslo Accords of 1993 imbues us to do, and that is what the overarching posture of the United Nations, family of nations are. Absolutely.
Deputy Minister, you're speaking to Ayanda, by the way. But I do wonder if, whether you're still open, not a problem, whether you're still open to discussions with Israel even after the recall of our diplomats from Tel Aviv. I mean, does it go without saying that those channels remain open in one way or the other?
Yes. It must be. That is a repository in, our arsenal, in our diplomatic arsenal. You would recall, for example, President Ramaphosa has been a key, pen holder to bring about the negotiations to a democratic transition in South Africa. He equally has been, a key figure to bring about the Good Friday Agreement with, in regards to, the challenges that Northern Ireland have experienced. So we are pivoting at all costs the, peace diplomacy. We obviously encourage, the state of Israel to engage with the South African government. The opportunity of Minister Pandor to engage with the Israeli ambassador would, in all regard, obviously also, heighten that particular aspect. We are seized with mediation, with negotiations and dialogue process. We are in support of various initiatives, obviously under the stewardship of Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations. And I must indicate, obviously, that we are in support also of the Cairo process as led by Egypt, which President Ramaphosa have attended a couple of weeks back.
Yeah. This has been an incredibly contentious issue, and that's probably putting it very mildly, given the loss of life, really, in Gaza. And there have been some of South Africa's, let's say, bilateral friends who have been very clear about their support of Israel in all of this. I wonder how worried you are about the fallout with them now that South Africa has recalled its diplomats from Tel Aviv.
Well, we are obviously not concerned with how they view our action, because our action is grounded firmly on, UN resolutions, including United Nations Security Council resolution that speaks about the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to return to the land in accordance with the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as its capital. So that is the first aspect. South Africa is, championing the implementation of United Nations resolutions in this regard. The second aspect, obviously, we should be concerned that some of our bilateral friends, including in Europe, that we thought historically are progressive, are having a deafening silence on, the genocide perpetuated against the Palestinian people. This genocide, is similar and probably more aggravated in its execution than what happened in Rwanda, that what happened in, Yugoslavia. And this is a crime against humanity. And we would ordinarily have expected our European friends, to publicly call for an immediate ceasefire, to publicly call for the establishment of a humanitarian corridor, and to publicly call for the return to the negotiation table. Those three key aspects, is what we as South Africa are obviously anchoring, and any bilateral partner that are steeped in human rights, that are steeped in the concerns in conflict for innocent lives of women and children that are being lost, should be actually the first to publicly proclaim what needs to be done. So we would want to use this opportunity to encourage, in particular our European friends, to speak truth to power, to engage with the state of Israel in relation to these three key critical aspects that South Africa are outlining.
All right. Alvin is the Deputy Minister of International Relations here in South Africa. Deputy Minister, appreciate your time. It's a story sharply on our radar, and we'll continue to track it as it unfolds. Once again, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.